crime boss Rockay City, the payday-like which never took itself too seriously, winning over many hearts for its surprisingly earnest attempt at nicking the payday formula, in some places more directly than others, courtesy of our old mate Bo. With all the campy charm of the many B-movies, it, whether knowingly or otherwise, spends most of its time parodying. Back in late June, this surprisingly well-supported game received one of its most impactful updates to date, which among other fun additions, including aliens, added a story mode, which not only takes proper advantage of its star power to try to tell a more cohesive narrative than the, by its very nature, messy roguelite approach, it also gives players a way to experience most of the DLC host content entirely for free, in the setting that makes the most sense. Today, we're going to be playing through that story mode from start to finish, except with one serious limitation. I'm not allowed to shoot my primary or secondary weapons. Melee and equipment damage is fair game though, giving me access to some of the most fun and ridiculous weapon offerings Crime Boss has added over the years, aiming to complete what remains my favourite challenge run rule set across all game series, as we find out if you can beat Crime Boss Rockay City without firing a bullet. Okay, before we get too far into this one, I want to emphasize this is a mostly for fun challenge with a distinct focus on the batshit insanity offered up by some of my favourite cutscenes in gaming.
Choo-choo! You know what that is? It's the Money Express. Now what the fuck's up?
You simply can't legislate for the hilariously emphatic delivery of the now tragically departed Michael Madsen, paired with utter confusion from Danny Glover in response. It's crystallized comedy, especially when the character's facial animations reset to neutral immediately after. That in mind, my priority is going to be showcasing as many of these laugh-out-loud moments as possible, less so grinding my way through a usually nightmarish rule set. Now, to be clear, the campaign it cannot currently be played on a difficulty higher than normal, and if I return to the series in the future, I will be back on the roguelite mode. There's simply way more jeopardy, difficulty, and interesting decisions to be made across the course of a run, although like hell was I going to do 50-odd turf wars without firing a bullet, so thank God for the campaign. Anyway, that's all to say this might not be the hardest challenge ever witnessed in the gaming space. I mean, probably could even lace the boots of Doses Only from earlier this year, but in exchange, it certainly should be up there in terms of fun factor, which is why I'm so excited to embark on this one. Speaking of which, it's time to kickstart the campaign with the introduction of Mac and the Interrogator. You see, this entire story is set up as a retelling of events from the perspective of Mac, a contractor for Baker's crew who showed up relatively recently in the grand scheme of things, but is able to give this mysterious interrogator the full lowdown on the story of the Candyman's rise and fall across the turfs of Rockay. Starting at the beginning, as we're surprisingly introduced to the arrival of one of Baker's loyal lieutenants, Nasara, played of course by Damien Poitier, the one and only Chains from the 90s, who's currently rocking up on the shore of Rockay with a knife in his back in a cutscene that goes entirely too hard for the tone of this game. But bear with this extremely heavy and vague backstory, as it'll essentially never be brought up again, all part of that crime boss charm. Stumbling over to a payphone to give old friend Casey, played by Kim Basinger, a call, this is how Nasara gets involved with Baker's campaign to take over Rockay, sort of by default I guess, as an associate of Casey's, who's also introduced here as Baker's gateway to the Rockay underworld, as he's planning to move in and start pushing pills. The camera's choice of focal point should give you an idea of the 90s vibes they're channeling. Just as well because within no time at all, we're thrust into the first mission of this playthrough, as Baker's pill-pushing convoy is hit by a soon-to-be rival faction, with two Rockay legends in Jupiter and Smoke already on the scene to defend it for him. Unlike in the roguelike campaign, these two are already well outfitted, even as level 1 crew members, with Jupiter's baseball bat landing comfortable one-hit kills on the Chico center robbers. With Rockay's extremely stripped-back health system, getting through this one is mostly just a case of hitting a few home runs and diving back behind cover to allow your health pool to regenerate with very limited risk of going down. Of course, I can switch between both characters thanks to Rockay's unique crew functionality, but what I can't do is take ranged weapons off my gang, meaning whilst I'm not controlling them, they will shoot, but there's so little I can do about that, so this won't be considered breaking the rules. Anyway, Candy defended, the drugs are ready to ship to the King's rooftop party, the current de facto overlord of the gangs in the city. But unfortunately, someone blows him up. This was always sort of ambiguous, but look at this guy's cheeky little grin. Surely Baker's the one who blew him sky high to leave Rockay wide open for the taking. I mean, why else would none of his associates have been caught in the blast? Nasara gets the wrong end of the stick, but Casey sets him right, setting this up as a true multi-faction turf war requiring Touchdown and the Graves to give Baker's crew a seat at the table. Meaning we get to watch some of the most unintentionally brilliant dialogue interactions in gaming, with Madsen and none other than Michael Rooker somehow acting out Oblivion NPC dialogue in a pre-scripted cutscene.
You're gonna go for the throne, ain't you?
Well, why the fuck not, right? I need a captain.
Huh?
Major League.
After that outstanding introduction, Smoke and Baker get to meet Touchdown in person, getting him out of a bind with some asshole he was selling weapons to with a few shuriken and hatchet swings. The non-shooting options in this game are fairly excellent and diverse, by the way. They certainly managed to get the satisfaction element of whacking dudes over the head down to a T. Not much to write home about on the difficulty front, just a few more of Hilo's Chicos to chop down and secure Touchdown's assistance. Don't let me steal the line.
Well, new adventures await, buddy.
Speaking of new adventures though, we can still do the usual promotion and hiring process that makes up the bones of progression in the roguelite mode. Here it's far less important as you're not limited by an energy and day progression system, but you can still find and hire crewmates with particular skills you want. For example, Breach over here is more inclined towards stealth jobs, something I'll need as we look to complete a minor heist to start bringing in the cash. This simple bust ambush shows just how much you can get away with in Rockay's stealth framework, always having the chance to subdue guards without repercussions if you can catch them even slightly unaware. It feels a little cheesy at times and means the no shooting stipulation is virtually circumvented in stealth by the core mechanics of the game, but where I do have to give Rockay praise is in its genuinely best-in-class crewmate AI. These guys are smart, they'll react quickly to commands, control civs independently, and loot, delivering bags back to the van as they find appropriate. For a single-player campaign, this is a godsend, speeding along the loot-moving process and making it out on this one without the arrival of the cops. I don't mind these heists, by the way, especially not here where this is basically the only mandatory one in the entire run, but they are a source of frustration when playing Baker's Battle, as these repetitive micro-missions are necessary for leveling characters and earning cash, ending up as the focal point of most campaigns alongside the turf wars, which are also mercifully absent here, rather than spotlighting the genuinely interesting major heists the in-game team have designed. Anyway, in response to hitting a tiny little convoy, we get the cutscene tied to the sheriff's arrival, none other than Chuck Norris, who passed away in March, the second of two tragic losses to the Rockay City cast, with Madsen, as I mentioned previously, also leaving us far too soon back in June of last year. Whilst much was made of their phoned-in performances at the time, and this is somewhat the risk of casting aging stars in your game, so much of Rockay City's lasting personality comes from these guys, and the tragedy of their passing is felt at times throughout the story mode, especially when the Baker cutscenes start to dry up later into the run. But for now, we should just enjoy all the irreplaceable campiness, which makes it tough to take your eyes off the screen at times. Notable in this briefing with Touchdown Nasara as we prepare to go on the offensive against the other factions, specifically Khan's forces, to start wrestling back control of the city.
Fucking commies.
What I like about this hit on the repair shop is that it introduces us to 4 new potential crewmates in Chase, Ropes, Tuna and Vamp, some of my favourite characters from past campaigns with some pretty useful potential skill sets. Take Vamp for example, a stealthier character who is perfectly suited for taking down Khan's riders around the garage. The goal of this one is opening up a safe which has an armoured transport's travel schedule inside. A straightforward lift when there's no Khans left alive in the vicinity to call this one in. I've always thought it was crazy that these guys can be ambushed and subdued just as easily as regular security. You'd think hardened criminals might have a bit more backbone, but fortunately for us, that is not the case. Calling over the other 3 crewmates to clear out the repair shop and complete this one silently at the first time of asking. That of course flows into the transport hit itself taking place in the evening. This loud-only heist is more the realm of my other standardized crewmates, with Tuna in particular already a standout favourite of mine, with the massive explosive power of cluster grenades, paired with the crazy range and AoE impact of the shovel melee, probably my favourite to swing this far into the run. Timing the source speed mechanic is pretty much where the difficulty of this one tops out, especially when the cop response on normal, it doesn't exceed 2 stars at this stage of the run, making for getting another completion without much concern. The Legend crew continues their campaign from here with a standard bank heist, although this at least is a new bank to me, a variation on the classic branch hit I've yet to experience. Stealth on this one seems fascinating with all these laser wires down in the basement, but sadly a cam caught me out here, meaning we instead need to go the old-fashioned approach, simply pulling out a thermal drill for a standard vault break-in. Nothing too crazy, although I am now learning it's a tough proposition dragging out bags of loot myself, as the second bag we grab forces us to use our pistol instead. This gun butt melee swing is still lethal, but undoubtedly unimpressive, meaning I'm probably better off sticking just a single bag on a character that I'm controlling, actually getting down for the first time on this run as a result. Still, with a full crew backing me up, nothing too alarming to have to deal with, loading up little Goji's van, who is back by the way, although notably more fond of using a certain picture of me than before, to escape this one within the bonus granting time frame. With that, we move on to the next chapter in this run, which would normally be the arrival of detectives to impact the territory control mode. But here, it's instead a clever excuse to introduce Gloves to the team, Danny Glover's character, who's Baker's detective on the inside. If you already thought you'd seen the most awkward cutscene this game had to offer, think again. Gloves and Baker's interactions consistently blow everything else out of the water.
What is it that you do?
I have your back. I stalk the prey, you kill it.
Okay.
The detective and the predator.
Yeah, you can kind of picture that.
If you can make it out between the world's most confusing back and forths, this is the setup for the train heist, the first really big job we're embarking on, with the initial requirement on this one being to hit the jewelry store to steal another crooked copper ring to propose with in exchange for information on the money train. This one's as straightforward as it comes, with the Legend crew now available for selection on any heist, and Breach back in the team to sneak around the back, taking down cams and enabling the rest of the squad to hold up the store without any repercussions. Again, I love that the crew are active in their intimidation and looting tactics, meaning I'm free to again drill a safe to a special gemstone whilst everyone else tears up the front of the store. I do really like the way these heists have been threaded into the narrative, and the idea of doing a favour to unlock the next big score is kind of the core concept Den of Wolves is looking to explore, but is already done really well here in Crime Boss. Baker seems to like it anyway.
Yee! Fuck it up!
The remaining setup mostly involves spending cash to plan the heist, which is a bit less involved from a gameplay perspective, but I've always loved that you can instead pay directly with loot, which always feels great in the roguelike. The final setup mission, again taken on by Breach, is a simple break-in of the underground tunnels as we plant C4 to detonate the train. Our reward for all this is the best damn cutscene in the entire game.
So, that goes smooth? Good work?
Great work. The big-ass bomb is planted. We're ready to blow this motherfucker. We'll do it when it's loaded with cash and moves out. And now, we chill.
You gonna share that? You chillin' villain? Just like a choo-choo train. You gonna share that?
Once Baker recovers from the blue balling, I drop him into the team to hit this train with little more than a throwing knife and meat cleaver. The fire extinguisher objective is also pretty neat, and you can be damn sure this doesn't count as shooting in my eyes. Speeding along access to the train is just as well, as the heat on this one finally sees SWAT showing up to try and stop us. Again, as a loot-heavy heist, the core challenge comes when moving these bags without access to our melee weapon for some reason, relying on the bag's stun effect and throwables to keep moving forward. Tuna without his shovel is nothing though, needing to abandon a few bags to actually defend ourselves, with 4 badges worth of SWAT spawns inbound, going down a couple of times under the pressure, but again saved by how generous they are in this campaign with character stats, securing enough cash to escape via the chopper airlift, and clearing the first major hurdle on this run.
Not gonna lie, that gives me great joy.
With the Gloves campaign clear, it's time to again switch focus back over to the territory war, with Yellow, played somehow by Vanilla Ice, the first on the chopping block after his earlier transgression, and now picking on our boys working out on Muscle Beach. This cannot stand, as shown by Touchdown's facial expression. A captain hit on the Chico's party spot was as straightforward as it comes, ripping through these gormless idiots before they even cottoned on, and returning to take the boss down before fleeing to the escape van with Tuna, a total walk in the park, which convinces Yellow to go after our drugs in retaliation. Outside of one of my favourite interactions in the game, using a body bag to stun the guy's mate before sounding the alarm, or my mouse breaking briefly, this quickfire warehouse hit was also incredibly simple. My hot take is that the campaign doesn't need these filler heists so much, slightly breaking up the pacing, but at least they fit in well enough to the campaign structure, building out the rivalry between gangs, which would normally be cemented by the hundreds of turf wars you partake in. Once more, the Blues are back in our possession, and this apparently triggers the world's briefest of truces between us and the rapper, agreeing to help out recover some of his take, which the cops already encircled. This ambush mission is actually quite dynamic and fun, switching over to smoke and tearing away back to the loot van with his katana, boosted by one of his character perks. Perks are something that have been really developed further in Crime Boss since the game first came out, with many of the DLC perks being outright busted as far as I can tell, and really are the primary ways I can augment this melee playstyle. For instance, here we have increased sword damage and range from Razor Focus, which comes in handy. For all our hard work, Vanilla Ice again rewards us with more crystallized cringe as he throws down the gauntlet at a confused Baker.
Funny!
What the fuck is tickling you?
Who you reckon called the cops, Pops?
Okay, whatever. Wait a minute.
Yeah, boy! I got you!
This is where the narrative again catches up to Mac, the pseudo-narrator for this whole retelling, as we intend to use a grudge he holds against Yellow to get to him directly and cut off the head of the snake. Unfortunately, he's already under attack at the train station we recently robbed, requiring us to again jump directly into combat with Jupiter and her mob. Yes, you heard me right. At least she also has access to some C4 for serious AoE damage. I have no idea who this football player is, seemingly buffing the cops. I'm not sure I ever see another one across the entire campaign, but I guess that's cop variety of a sort. Rather than sawing Mac's safe house open, we go anti-payday gang and need to actually stop the drill for once before regrouping and starting the journey back to the officers defending Mac. Now that this has turned into a dreaded escort mission, I go down for the first time, but that's not enough to sway things in the cops' favour, returning to the control centre for Mac to have access to the train for escape. Everything about this heist is super frenetic, feeling less like a classic heist and more like these strange character-specific side missions we'd be given in the roguelite mode, which I might be the only living fan of in the world. A final holdout upstairs on this one at 4-star intensity sees Mac finally get the train to open up before climbing aboard for the escape. In all honesty, I've always found the idea of fleeing on a vehicle that's only capable of going forwards and backwards on a pretty fixed path, pretty suspension of disbelief breaking, but at the end of the day, this is a fairly excellent reuse of map content from later in the game's lifespan to tell this Yellow portion of the story. The problem is, as well as Mac carries this one alone, and as solid as the inter-crew banter is in this game, with the heisters far more chirpy and switched on than the deafeningly silent Payday gang, the lack of Baker cutscenes is painfully felt. Don't worry though, he will be back once we've dealt with Yellow, the first step to which we will be undertaking in their own pill-pushing drug lab. Again, I believe this is a reused setting, but can't complain too much, as after almost 10 minutes I still managed to get lost while stealthing this one, forcing everything loud from there on in. Objective-wise, this heist isn't particularly inspired in its first half, simply requiring us to blast a path into the lab basement and to strip it clean of its produce, a classic bag-moving simulator setup. Unfortunately, it's also the first time I can recollect notable frame rate hitching, an issue I've heard complained about quite frequently in relation to this game in recent years, but hasn't really bothered me thus far. Hopefully not a sign of things to come, as I think it's just the sheer size of the play space that's doing it, and with a few RPGs from Chase, the patois-speaking Rastafari, that frustration was quickly put to bed. This is legal, by the way, because for whatever reason, in this game the RPG sits in the utility or throwable slot, like frags or throwing knives, meaning this is still not shooting, despite the appearance. Things heat up for the final portion of this heist though, as it feels a lot more Payday inspired in its second act, heading over to a car dealership to steal Yellow's prize yellow sports car, blasting the roof open panic room style, and airlifting this thing via magnet as it wears its inspiration pretty boldly on its sleeve, casually standing atop the flying vehicle to escape this one with just 2 downs across the entire squad. We also steal a certain sex tape back from Mac, which was being held as blackmail and serves as the driving force behind his desire to help out Baker's crew. It also sets us up for a final showdown with Yellow himself, with Vanilla Ice seemingly reprising his role in a heist I didn't previously know existed, but think is extremely cool in design. Giving us the opportunity to actually kill off one of its celebrity characters is a ballsy move, piloting Travis Baker himself through the stealth section of this one, which requires us to parkour our way across the canals and up to the stage where Yellow's finishing up his mic check. This one gets fairly elaborate from here, needing to locate some fireworks for some inexplicable reason, which requires some fairly bold plays as we need to control the crowd zone to take hostages and open these trucks up. The first two are sadly empty, meaning we need to saw open the third, which is far too noisy to remain in stealth, as gutted as I am to not see how this one proceeds silently. Rejoined by the crew though, we instead need to hold off the Chicos while still securing the fireworks, which we fire at the second floor of the stage to set it ablaze and force Yellow to come down and fight at our level, a genuinely sick set piece within this heist. Unfortunately, the ambush, led by his mate Carlos, as made famous by this cutscene,
Yo, Carlos! Woo, looking fly, son.
Baker's Blue X. All of it.
This looked fun.
Stay off the candy, bitch.
Hey, be nice to the talent, man.
which is sadly cut from the story experience, was all too much for Chase, who was dropped almost instantly. Back up thanks to the crew, we're free to end Carlos's reign of terror, switching over the track to something more palatable than Yellow's slop, and go mop to Mike with him. Dealing melee damage isn't very sustainable though, but they fortunately thought of everything because we can force him out of cover and deal damage using the pyrotechnics setup on the stage, not to mention the old RPG from time to time. It's a bit of a clunky boss fight and I never felt in grave danger, but was gutted to miss out on the finishing blow. Still, I'm in awe of the balls on them for this, giving us the chance to directly take out Yellow, ending this arc in the story by literally wiping the Chicos out of existence, rather than simply running them out of town. Meaning, tragically, no more of this.
You gotta push them pills harder, dog. Box the Candyman out.
Good luck with that.
Bitch, shut the hell up.
The logical next mob boss on the more than proverbial chopping block now is Khan, giving us the perfect excuse to delve into probably Rockay City's most iconic heist chain, the Demon Dogs from the initial trailer. With that, Silver is introduced with some of the worst lip syncing in gaming, another informant who's willing to join the crew more permanently as we pay her to go photograph the dogs in their containers to give us a clue of where they're being shipped, a stealth-only heist that would regularly lock you out of the Demon Dogs mission should you fail. Which I really shouldn't have done on attempt 1, but getting spotted on the camera on the way out means no completion apparently, even though the mission says success. Confusingly, this just required me to run it back once, which I dutifully did, photographing the shipping manifest and dogs in their containers to ensure the final heist would go ahead as planned, escaping silently this time, although it's quite notable the jeopardy of failure is pretty much entirely gone from this storyline campaign. All good though, when you've got line delivery like this to keep you engaged.
Exciting! This is going to be great! Let's all get out happy. In and out. Bring your dancing shoes.
Good to see Gloves is excited, as he's again the handler for this heist, something Rockay does really well to vary up the experience. Although I've played Demon Dogs plenty, I'm still not sure I've ever cleared it silently, which is a dark I won't be breaking today, but at least it gives me the chance to try out the boss's new set of knuckle dusters, which amusingly have more launch than a baseball bat. Whilst the setting for this heist is pretty amazing, the actual objective really just boils down to drilling open some vaults, whilst the cops filter in from a very predictable angle. Hell, you don't even need an animation to move the dogs anymore, instead they'll just operate like payloads in TF2 and move when you're in the vicinity. Cool from a gameplay perspective, not exactly heist fantasy fulfilling, but that's hardly Crime Boss's MO, moving both dogs up to the lobby for the chopper to pick up manually. What I do enjoy on this heist is the surprise escape plan in Loud, blasting through the sewers, which can really show the power of max level bosses, rolling both bullet damage resistance and melee damage perks, making me pretty much a full on melee tank when piloting Baker. Jupiter though is the perfect character for the escape as she's a pack mule, packing 2 bags without needing to switch to my secondary, meaning bonus loot at no added risk, escaping in a pre-hidden dinghy for another clean victory. Not a clean cutscene though, as again it's seemingly desynced as Baker absolutely loses it at the sight of Gloves.
I got gloves.
Highbrow humour at its finest, with Sheriff Norris absolutely fuming at us flying choppers inside his city.
Now, the air marshals say they should protect the...
Sky! Fucking sky, you motherfucker.
Now that's passionate for the job. Khan's retaliation is to hit Baker's turf with a convoy of his riders, but fortunately I just bought Chase a new power to even the odds. I have no idea what the in-universe explanation is for his ability to literally spawn a repeater-wielding shaman out of thin air, but I'm absolutely not gonna complain about a 5th temporary crewmate. I've always really liked this scenario. I think them blowing the escape van is a great twist, but compared to the robotic foes we'll be facing soon enough, these street punks don't offer too much resistance, easily repelling the wave whilst Nasara sorts as a second ride and escaping this one without so much as a scratch on my crew. Our response is to strike back at Khan by sneaking into one of his held dockyards to confirm the existence of his coke trade at work. I love these open-ended hits on rival factions as you can take them all out in stealth without alerting suspicion, giving you the same sort of logistical murder fun as you would when playing something like Scarface Mansion in Payday 2, methodically knocking our foes off whilst trying to avoid a chain reaction of alerts. In this case, Baker, his knife and fists are more than enough to full clear the area, meaning no one's left to hear the saw as we steal the rider's loot. The sheriff is confirmed to also be piling the pressure on Khan, leading to Baker having a change of heart in an instant as we decide to rob one of his smuggling vessels by sending the Graves in to broker a deal for the boatload.
Oh snap! Done deal! We go and take all of that!
Deal. How you say? Talk soon.
Coolio! Page me!
After all that setup, getting a deal with the Khans though, acting as high-value buyers and sending Casey's girls aboard, it turns out the police were just as keen to get in on the action, already holding up the docks, having landed a successful raid on their smuggling operation, which is now a crime scene and patrolled by cops. Casey takes the lead on this one as the handler, as I'm piloting Vamp again, with the goal of clearing out the Olga without killing anyone. The motion sensor is an unbelievably strong tool in doing so, marking not only the cops around the super yacht, but also giving me wall hacks for the locations of the drugs they're smuggling. A crazy overpowered stealth tool which probably shouldn't regenerate endlessly, but game balance was never Rockay's forte, meaning we always get the drop on the cops. I say that only to fail in subduing the final guard in my way, needing to instead give them the cleaver treatment and failing the bonus I worked so hard to achieve. Still, this is a massive earner of a heist and fairly satisfying stealth clear when all's said and done. It's also the end of Khan, as rather than waste all the intel gathered on him, we instead ourselves turn it over to the cops, not the coke of course, but everything else, to ensure the Mongol warlord ends up behind bars, a comparatively peaceful way of taking over his turf compared to poor Yellow, as Norris finally gets his man. This calls for celebration with a new hire. Head honcho, also known as Wiz, is a true legend with some really unique tools, as he wields an explosive secondary which the AI will use, and has an awesome stun bat and homing drone combo. A fantastic addition to the team if you can get past what I assume is meant to be a Cuban accent. I genuinely have no idea. My primary memories of Wiz involve dropping the soap in one of those many god-awful single-chance side missions in prison, which I always used to inevitably fail.
Right? You mean what?
Anyway, we need to get our hands on a data disk net to set up the major bank heist this game released with. With a little luck, this silent ambush for the briefcase worked out well enough, zapping the shit out of the boss who arrived in the multi-story, a showcase of what makes the electric bat so powerful as it will stun lock most enemies. A two-man hit without much of a hitch, whilst Baker chills out with this scantily clad friend of Casey's. Nasara, a ventriloquist in a previous life, calls up without moving his mouth to let us know we need to silently bug the original branch bag, not getting an opportunity to rob this one for some reason, but instead just need to send Vamp to silently get the job done, using the very powerful motion sensor to keep tabs on basically every security guard in the heist to clear this one in just a couple of minutes.
Looks like we got us a fucking piggy bank to knock over.
There's DC money in this bank.
Ah, that's why the fucker's hidden.
Let's prep. We need zipline setups, perhaps a super drill.
Okie dokie, let's fucking hit it.
Let's get there and lick that vault clean.
As the boys explain, this gives us the intel we need on this hidden Washington Bat vault, full of much more cash than you'd see held at a branch, something the Payday games have always knowingly ignored. This is your standard First World Bank inspired hit though, with very few prerequisites for going into this one. On the first attempt I completely forgot you need to find the correct PC or else it'll just melt the floppy disk we spent ages decrypting, but after a quick reset I remembered to first locate the night manager's name, give us clean access to the vault before things go instantly loud as we open it up. Again, I'm running a diverse set of crew equipment options, although the C4 with Jupiter remains a clear winner. I find Ropes, who's packing the flashbang, to be far more useful at saving tight situations. Still, although this is a forced loud mission, it never feels too intense to handle, moving the vault's loot over to the lift and dragging it up to the rooftop, where the zipline gives us a clean way to move bags out of the area. Inexplicably, after moving the first few, the game decided it was ending the mission, I have no idea why, because it didn't. That text just sat distractingly on my screen for the remainder of its duration, although it didn't stop me from landing this spicy shuriken throw across the map to reduce sniper pressure and secure the final bags on the zipline, finally ending the mission on my own terms. Kind of a random heist, not sure how it ties into the takeover Rockay City narrative, but they had to find a way to fit in all the cool heists, so I'm cool with it, giving me enough cash in my spoils room to fund the rest of the run with no problems. The Kknowley campaign, on the other hand, is pretty much as strong as the Rockay City storytelling gets. I made an entire video covering this one when it first came out with the Steam release, so it won't be quite as detailed for this run, but let it be known I think the robot DLC is kind of excellent, although it's not ideal for a melee only stipulation, as these bots hit hard and we see the arrival of turrets later on. Although they clearly don't hit hard enough, as after entering Baker's prophetic drug-fueled stupor, a kind of fun bit of psychedelic storytelling if you ask me, I was stuck here for over 10 minutes with just a katana for defense, holding off Kknowley's robots, earning the Luddite achievement for wiping out over 50 of them, till I remembered you straight up need to die to get through this one, fragging my own feet to finally wake up.
What the fuck?
Servo is the new allied character introduced at this point, and I believe these were some of the final cutscenes ever recorded by Madsen's Baker, so bask in their glory. The core difficulty of the robot army is the fact that they show up to aid the police until you deal with Kknowley, but that's obviously far less of an issue here in the story mode, instead just need to focus on rescuing the Graves from their robo-led prison. Although the head honcho hit the deck, I believe blown up by my own drone, which was a bit of a rocky error, the Bat did a fine job of crushing the robots in a single blow, guaranteeing an easy exit after just a matter of minutes. Now to go on the offensive, upgrading our armory with the power of narcotics, and buying some better guns to equip the AI helpers on the next all-out war on the Cyberstorm heist. I love the concept and setting of this one, raiding a number of network access points to limit Kknowley's control over the city, really moving around the place, although I'm not a huge fan of these defend the power generator objectives. It just feels like I'm running around constantly like a headless chicken to try and get ahead of her troops, which is made all the worse by my lack of shooting abilities. Even so, the first motel section was easy work, and with my replete explosives arsenal, it was possible to blast my way through this alleyway choke point, as terrified as ropes sounded. I'm gonna say, none of these legends are as iconic as the Payday Gang, but that doesn't mean they don't have some excellent lines and some moments with stellar delivery. Ropes is a real standout for me. Anyway, the second set of generators are far more of a pain than the first, but nothing we can't handle with a bit of persistence, patience, and a quick revive from the crew. Rocking up at the construction site from Baker's dream, and walking directly into the world's most thinly veiled betrayal known to man, as Kknowley decided to fire a rocket at her own chopper. Having already held out indefinitely solo, doing so now with a full team was unlikely to be an insurmountable challenge, holding back the waves for long enough for Servo to hack them into submission, escaping in our own helicopter this time. That brings us on to the final climactic act of this section of the campaign, as we now receive the full backing of the Rockay police to send our muscle in to take her down, as they've quickly come to realise her support of law enforcement was fairly conditional and not to be relied upon. That means a full-on jaunt straight into our offices in the main robot production facility. Going loud from the off, this one is a bit of a mess. I think it's fair to say the Kknowley faction enemies are a step up from the usual riff-raff on this campaign. Not to mention the automated turrets that absolutely rip their way through melee builds, with a first panic in the lobby going through my initial set of downs, not helped by Mr. X deciding to go walkabouts once inside the lift, phasing through the door and out of reality briefly. Held up again at a corridor ambush, this is the first heist in the run that's really gone in kicking and screaming, as even setting up the EMPs around the production lines was hard work, with my crew AI for the first time in the run making a few slip-ups in their positioning. Still, we managed to destroy the bots, but the second ambush as we aimed to flee Kknowley's office was a bridge too far, rushing out and not using my most powerful equipment options, leading to chain downs and the boss left on his own. A recipe for disaster that would be the end of a roguelite run, and the first time we get to enjoy one of those wonderful last man standing ragdolls falling face first into the door. Not the end of the world when it's in story mode though, as we just get to run this one back, but a warning sign that going melee only does have its downsides on a heist with particularly heavy fixed spawns. And this instant response from Kknowley's troops felt even heavier the second time around, dropping 4 downs on 3 of my crewmates before the lift downstairs even opened up. At least this time I knew what to expect once down there, using Baker's gas grenade to catch the choke point and setting up the EMPs once again, albeit at the cost of a few more key resources. Saved by the bell, Smoke on his final life was teleported up to the control room just in the nick of time to regroup, with me properly using my inexplicable shaman summon to help clear a path, just about regrouping on the second floor back up to the lift for the final showdown with Kknowley. I sort of forgot the gimmick of this one, whacking the roof turrets, until I remembered I need to hit these strange power batteries on the side of her platform. Paradoxically, Baker's knuckle dusters offer the highest DPS at our disposal, not the skull on a stick chase wields, which in all my RPG experience tells me should do way more damage. One-shotting the final shield generator and three-shotting the augmented lady herself to make it into the cutscene and officially complete the toughest heist in the run. Upon regaining control, I found myself with a choice to make, but not really, as I can't shoot her while sticking to the rules. However, for this campaign, I'm not sure the canon decision really matters. I'm Merciful Baker, not for the rewards or the morality, but for the rules, baby. The only tenets we worship here. Now that brings us on to some of the most recently released heists in the game, actually contracted by Mac for the Triads. At this point, I had the chance to recruit Cracker, one of my favourite characters you're almost guaranteed to encounter on a standard run of Baker's Battle, who I also had the chance to outfit with a sentry turret, another really powerful option for that deployable slot. The two heists we're faced with, Afterburner and Art of the Heist, are undoubtedly some of the best in the entire game, helped by the fact that this is the first time I'm playing them. Afterburner first, set in the bank heist we took on earlier, which went awry in stealth early on, when despite knocking this guy out using his dead buddy, I was still unable to salvage the situation with Runaway, another stealth-focused Rockay legend. Thank God for that though, as this unlocks one of the coolest entry approaches we've seen in any heisting game, period. Channeling the madness of some of Payday 2's most innovative methods by using a literal jet engine to melt the vault door away. It's not quite as straightforward as that though, needing to first roll this thing into place and keep it fueled with gasoline from the petrol station nearby, giving it that classic, elaborate drill defense feel. When it goes, boy does it go though, blasting the vault door straight outwards after expanding the metal and giving us access to the contents. Most importantly, a pair of dragon statues the Triad is after. The sentry does an exemplary job of defending this choke point as we get to looting and clearing this one without too many close calls. These Mac heists are maybe the closest the game has come to matching Payday 2's design creativity, but the loss of Baker cutscenes hit like a roundhouse kick, especially when you remember the reason why these more recent releases couldn't be flanked by Baker's iconic delivery is Madsen's tragic passing.
I just found out that our client is a boss for a sect of the Triads, so I'd rather not let this guy down. Let's get the rest of the statue and get paid.
Mac's good, but I believe he was voiced internally and without anyone to bounce off, it does leave some of the more polished heists begging for the insanity of the original cast to properly round them off. The same is true of the art gallery, although I get the feeling this one's the reverse of the last and acts as more of a true stealth experience. Sadly, I didn't listen, meaning the first thing I did was open a display and steal a statue, which instantly triggered the alarm, meaning we do this one the slightly less interesting way. Wiz was happy to bring the fireworks still, finally starting to use his grenade pistol thing to shake the bloody earth while soaring into the bars holding Han's Fang. Relatively speaking, this is a very underwhelming way to gain access to the loot, but pretty much anything would be compared to the last heist. I'm still having plenty of fun with the sound effects of bashing the detectives who showed up over the head with Yellow's microphone knuckle duster. From there, we just need to hold out the courtyard, as it seems most of the budget on this one went into the art gallery itself, simple enough with all these explosives at my disposal, securing the statue, admittedly missing a few pieces as it does physically degrade when shot at, which is a cool mechanic to really encourage stealth without necessarily harming the loud gameplay experience. Another more than solid heist in the bag. I like the way Skyhall up next threads this whole experience together with an airstrip escape, dropping all the loot stolen to the finale of this section of the campaign, although it's not exactly inspiring from an objective standpoint. We just need to signal the pilot and repel wave after wave of escalating SWAT, whilst our loot is carried in via van or found in situ inside some of these shipping containers. Unfortunately, it's also not the most polished of heists, as you can see from this moment when Chase was run over by a car, which he inexplicably became a part of for the rest of the mission. Whilst controlling him, I'm physically unable to escape, and then once downed and able to switch characters, I daren't try to free him again to avoid soft-locking myself. Even so, he worked as a surprisingly effective turret, covering the other 3 as at this point I'm damn powerful and perked out on most characters. Ropes has melee skills, Wiz has that powerful drone, and Tuna has a shovel. What more can you really ask for? This one really drags on as you need to first move loot over time, and spawns aren't exactly inspired, mostly trapping the SWATs as they climb over walls, unless of course they come in their murder vehicles as poor Chase found out. Then after all that we still need to refuel the plane, which takes another couple of minutes, never feeling too at risk despite the 5 badge response, making it out of this one and finally freeing Chase in just over 20 minutes. Big fan of how quickly the boys seem to calm down after this one, by the way. I guess it really was a walk in the park. This doesn't really fit into the narrative anywhere.
Okay, so working with the Triad, that was to spite Dragon? Interfere with his operations?
No, Dragon knew nothing about it.
Then what was that all about?
You said you needed to know everything.
Spare me the goddamn filler. I keep asking you about Dollar Dragon, so just tell me. What happened to him?
I mean, they outright state that fact in the next interrogation scene, but I really do appreciate this as an opportunity to try out all these new heists entirely for free, even if you don't own the associated DLC. That being said, we finally do move on to the last core storyline next.
You always said it would end something like this. I thought you were just paranoid. You wear the crown long enough, it's only a matter of time until you have to give it away. Or someone takes it from you.
Dollar Dragon, the king's right hand, better known as Danny Trejo, actually gives a fairly top-notch performance. He's a seasoned pro when it comes to cameos, and I especially like this version of him from the Gold Cup DLC. By the way, at this point I hired Lynx, a randomly generated crewmate who just happened to be born with Razor Focus 3, the max tier version of Smoke's katana skill, which allows you to literally deflect bullets from the front 85% of the time. Naturally, I will be making the most out of this fella. But first, Baker's back, baby.
Fuck yeah! You're looking at the winner of Rockay motherfucking City.
So we want to steal the gold. The King's gold held up in that ultra high security vault, which Sheriff Norris also wants to utilize to fund his campaign against Baker. We first take the perspective of a janitor, a now playable character who eavesdrops on Norris and the security chief at the facility to get some insider information on how to break in. Unfortunately, it's locked behind a biosignature, meaning we somehow need to get our hands on the hand of the king, quite literally, which means Baker needs to cozy up with his old right hand. Hilarity, of course, ensues.
A loyal dog, even after master death. Cute.
Bavoso! Now I'm gonna teach you some respect. You motherfucker! You set me up!
The fuck you talking about? You chose this place!
I'm a huge fan of buddying up with our old nemesis, and Baker and Dragon actually have some chemistry. It even sometimes feels like they might have read the lines they're meant to be responding to before heading into the booth, which surely helps. The escape at the golf course is a little on rails and far from ideal within a no-shooting run, but nothing we can't tank our way through at this point with max-level Baker. Speaking of which, we also get the chance to do some sneaking with Baker next as we enter the king's highly locked down crypt to cut off his hand with Dragon's surprise blessing. Again, the in-heist banter here works great to sell this whole thing, quite the opposite of Max Heist. We're not doing anything special or even particularly interesting here, but the characters sell it regardless. Speaking of which, we get the whole gang back together for one more round table to prepare for the mission and make the right investments.
Trucks, C4, and a shit ton of gold. I fucking love it.
I strongly suggest we explore a different approach.
Mira, pendejo! This is the plan, Nasara! You better get on board!
Haha, alright! Let's do this fucking thing!
At this stage though, this is chump change with 7 mil in the bank. We also quickly make our way into a storage unit, mostly in stealth until I called the crew over to secure some bonus C4 to blast open the escape tunnel. Then, and again, this is the Den of Wolves concept pulled off perfectly, we get the opportunity to pick our approach and gain a few boons while executing a number of simultaneous heists. First, we send Runaway to sabotage a few police trucks, delaying their response time by letting down their tires, meaning we'll have more time if things go loud. Then we send Nasara's spy to locate some container codes being shipped into the secure building, opening up the opportunity to avoid blasting straight through the front door, meaning stealth is now on the table. Next, we send the crew on the day of the heist to hit a small town bank, specifically to stage a hostage situation and further occupy the police. Something that got a little touch and go at times, but was still child's play, with Cracker's sentry gun doing most of the heavy lifting, before getting the diversionary crew out of there via smokescreen chopper. That means we can cleanly slip a stealth crew into those containers verified the other night to ensure we make it inside the fortress without being forced out. Once inside, with Runaway's talents, it was fairly easy to move around undetected on the upper floors here, but the one slight issue I have is I've never done this before, getting very confused when opening the electrocuted cages and accidentally setting off gas in there before making a fatal slip up at the circuit breakers, setting off the automated roof turrets and forcing things loud immediately. On the plus side, with all those cop delays active, we'd moved half the loot before the police even showed up, making for an eerily quiet first section, although when they did arrive, Lynx proved his immediate worth and apparent Jedi skills, deflecting bullets with his exosword. Yes, this game is set in the 90s. After filling up 3 trucks though, Dragon heartbreakingly goes for the betrayal option, using his Apache helicopter to start raining hell on the ground crew and collapsing our escape tunnel. I was told I could use the depot against it, but have no idea how, and my own ranged options were fairly limited as you know, firing the odd RPG, but to surprisingly little effect. That means he got the tunnel, and we're forced to find a new way out. All these diverging paths are pretty cool, by the way, especially if you also have the fear of losing your crew to a harder variation, and I will make an effort to learn its mechanics next time around. That being said, I think I might even prefer using C4 to blow up a flag to create a bridge back over to the golf course from earlier, whilst Dragon shouts in my ear. The final stretch out in the open was certainly touch and go after they blew the bridge, especially with half my team intended for stealth, but with the power of Silver's microphone, we just about kept Runaway alive, leaping over to escape by boat at last.
So what do you do with your share? Go back to raising hell against me?
That was the plan. But plans change. I'm done.
What? Just like that? You just gonna sip cocktails on a beach somewhere while I take your turf?
You're not taking shit, gringo. I just don't got no use for it now.
You know, I thought about what you said about the gold.
Which part?
Where you said it shouldn't be split, that it should belong to the king. But I'm gonna be king regardless, so you'll get your cut.
You know what would happen if I didn't?
You know, why don't you come to work for me? Be a damn shame to let that expertise go to waste.
Work for you? You crazy guy, you know? Why would I do that?
'Cause I know you like to be on the winning side, of course. And we both know I'm gonna rule this damn city. Think it over.
You might ask, why are we just chill with Dragon after this? I have no idea. I mean, this also felt like an opportunity to make a decision on Dragon's future, and maybe it is when playing the roguelike, but it needs to end like this to fit the story mode narrative. I'll let it off, but I can't really see Baker allowing that whole dissolve you in a barrel threat to lie for long. Anyway, Dragon's on the crew now, and we're off for one final segue before we end this run for good, as Cracker puts us in touch with Agent Smith, CIA, in need of a dirty job done clean. Operation Cold Strike, one of the coolest missions conceptually in the game, and a phenomenal reuse of assets as they repurposed a few of Cracker's personal missions in the roguelite to create this, a full-on assault on an old Nazi testing facility to go steal a nuke meltdown style. An awesome setting with yet another well-voiced handler in Smith. Stealth wasn't maintained for long, but that's hardly the way to go about nicking a nuke, is it? Starting by getting bunker codes to bring the bomb to the surface, flattening this poor fella in the process. The literal payload needs protection, not just from the Russian operatives, but also from a literal battle tank. Fortunately, this thing takes more than solid damage from explosives like frag grenades, which Tuna's packing, finishing it off by mailing a landmine, which is pretty damn metal. With the path open to move the missile into a tunnel secured by our CIA allies, we just need to sabotage the fuel deposits in order to make a clean helicopter getaway. However, as this is also my first time, I got horrendously lost and accidentally stumbled into this secret bunker, which not only houses some of the craziest spawns I've experienced in the game, but also a lever-controlled vault. Rather than solve what I assumed to be the classic 5-lever puzzle, I just sort of gave them a yank and got lucky, opening up this really cool hidden side objective without too much trouble, Giving us access to the Germans' hidden war treasure, netting us a nice financial stimulus the CIA is happy to turn a blind eye towards. Look, it ain't overdrill, but it's still a really nice surprise for anyone taking on Cold Strike for the first time. The escape at the LZ was also made slightly harder by all those bags we'd found, but seeing as links can literally reflect sniper bullets with decent consistency, I'm not too concerned. Escaping the final major heist on this run, still without shooting a bullet. With that, Norris's funding is all but shut down thanks to our friends at the CIA, but this one has one final sting in the tail.
Did he know what could be waiting for him up on the roof of that bank? I doubt it. What do you miss, huh? How did Travis Baker die?
How did Travis Baker die? The rooftop bank heist, actually the very first mission I ever played in Rockay, as this holdout used to be the introduction to Baker's battle if I remember correctly. Sheriff Norris's final roll of the dice. Despite being stranded on the rooftop and unable to get up close and personal, my crew of Wiz, Lynx, Baker himself and Cracker was more than well enough equipped for this rooftop defense. The sentry went to town on the cop cars, Wiz's drone dealt with the snipers, and Lynx was semi-immortal. Not to mention, Cracker just unlocked a heal on kill skill, which I'm heartbroken to have only gained access to this late into the run. And with Baker still comfortably clearing SWATs straight off the roof in a single punch, it's tough to see how this could ever be the end of Travis Baker. With Nasara's escape chopper arriving with time and downs to spare, that leaves the question unanswered. But not for long.
I gotcha, kid.
And with that, Baker just blew the whole bloody challenge at the final hurdle. Come on man, you could have done him with a right hook just as easily. But although Cutscene Baker couldn't hack the challenge, at least in gameplay terms, that is crime boss Rockay City without firing a bullet, running Norris out of town and taking over the turf for good.
Can you believe that?
I tell you, it's fucking crazy, sir!
This game is every bit as ridiculous and unserious as it was when I left it, but in a world of corporately hollow AAA releases, I can't help but adore it for the bygone age of games it successfully represents. Shoveling a not insignificant portion of the budget into aging stars will always be a baffling decision, but years of unprecedented support from in-game studios has resulted in an unabashedly fun game, developed with passion and the kind of guerrilla tactics that enable franchises like Payday to exist in the first place, with dozens of employees wearing multiple hats and turning their hands to voice acting to bring things together on a shoestring budget. Immensely admirable, and a game that is more than deserving of its place in the pantheon of top-tier Payday likes. One of the best casual heisting experiences out there at the moment. Actually, this campaign is more down to earth than I was expecting, which is testament to them writing something genuinely cohesive from the rubble of what they could work with. I do think it's a bit sad there are no strange segues to Vietnam or Jupiter's Gym, as these absurd crew member campaigns add an absolute ton of that signature campiness to the game, and actually function as a fun way to level up skills for those particular crewmates. But I also fully understand why they probably wouldn't fit into this more rounded narrative, and would likely just serve to break the pacing. Still, the loss of Vanilla Ice cutscenes is a tragic miss. Cringe this pure only comes around once in a while. That being said, if you're still somehow on the fence about trying out Rockay City, ponder no longer. This game is massive now, goes very cheap, and has a ton of content I hadn't even touched after playing extensively at launch. If you've enjoyed this run, be sure to let me know. I'm keen to see what else we can do when we crank up the difficulty in the roguelite mode. Do check out my gaming PCs if you're in the market for something that might be able to handle Crime Boss, minus a few stutters. Take care, and I'll see you all very soon in the next video. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.